Okay, Gemara is we're going, the whole Yesod is Ma'ila b'Kodesh Ve'im Aridin. Throughout Shas, we know there's this concept of you go up in Kedusha and sanctity, but you never go down. So the Mishnah here is under discussion is the sale of objects, and the objects, one by one, ascend in order of Kedusha. We learned in Masechta Tainus that the people would assemble in the street. If they didn't work the Tanaisim, they would assemble in a street. And Davin, the Mamadais, all the things that would happen when the Taniyos did not work. So that's called the Rechayiv. So we begin the Perek. People of the city, they go ahead and they sell a Rechayiv that's in the city. Right? So it has, it says it has a certain Kedusha. Loichim b'dama beis hakneses. You will be able to go ahead and purchase a beis hakneses, right? Because the beis knesses has more kedusha than the street. Beis knesses, if a person goes ahead and sells the beis knesses, loichin teva, he can go ahead and buy lechari. He can buy an aron kodesh, right? Teva, if he sells an aron kodesh, loicha he can go ahead and bid machais. He could the mantle of the Sefer Torah, the mantle which is more kedusha. Mitbachais, if he sells mitbachais amid aleph, then yichus svarim. You can go ahead and you can buy. Again, they had Torah Nevi'im, that Nevi'im Ksuvim. You can go ahead and buy that. Right? Svarim, if you sell Svarim, like Torah, you can buy a Sefer Torah. So the ascension of Kedusha from Rechayiv to the Beis HaKnesses, to the Teva, the Oren, to the mantle, to the Svarim, to the Sefer Torah, that is, and the Sefer Torah, of course, is what is the epitome of Kedusha. Aval, however, if you sell a Sefer Torah, that money has the kedusha of the Sefer Torah, and therefore you can't downgrade by buying svarim, by buying the bim ksuvim. Svarim layichu mitbachais. If you go ahead and sell svarim, which are higher kedusha, you can't buy a mantle. Mitbachais layichu teva. You can't buy an aron kodesh. Teva layichu beis knesses layichu es harechayiv v'chein ma'isrei seyem. And any, let's say, money that's left over, you don't say, well, let's say the sale, you had $100, it was $100 to $100, and you sold it for $150, you have $50. That $50 would have the kedusha. It doesn't go ahead, right? It doesn't lose its kedusha. Okay, it says the Gemara. B'nei ir shemachru rechayiv shel ir, Amar Rabbi Rav Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Zudivrei Rav Nachman bar Yaisi Stumusa. This is the stam, a Mishnah stam according to Rabbi Nachman bar Yaisi, who says that the rechayiv of the city that you use for the ma'amades, for the gathering, for the days of the Tainus has kedusha, and therefore when you go ahead and sell it, it has kedusha, and you can always upgrade, but you couldn't use it for something else. The rechayiv has no kedusha, right? Has no kedusha. Therefore, you can do anything you want with the money. You don't have to purchase anything kedusha. You can do anything you want with the money. It's schooling. You can go to the chapanash. Rav Nachman bar Yossi, my timer. What's the reason that he holds? Where's the kedusha? The chachamim in Sfaro are correct. Why does Rav Nachman bar Yossi hold this kedusha? Hoyel v'am mispalin by betaniyos. Since the am daven and the taniyos, uv'ma'amados and the ma'amados, Rabbanan hu akroi ba'alma. Excuse me, it has kedusha. Rabbanan l'chayra. So Rav Nachman bar Yossi is correct. Since you're gathering there for this purpose, it has a certain kedusha. Says the Rabbanan hu akroi ba'alma. It's not a set kedusha. It's just it's here and there. It's kedusha here and there. That's not a real kedusha. Okay. So we said you can go ahead and from Rechayiv you can buy Beis Knesses, and Beis Knesses you can buy a teva. Now it's mashma Beis Knesses is able to be sold. What kind of Beis Knesses are we speaking about? So Amar Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Brenison, Lo Shonu, we did not learn right that you're able to sell a Beis Knesses, Ella Beis Knesses shel Kfarim, a Beis Knesses in the boondocks. It's in the village. It's owned by the village, they own it, and therefore, since it's uniquely limited to the village and owned by the village, it can be sold. Our basic Knesset shall krachim, but a base Knesset that is of the city, and the people, therefore, since it's a city, it's there for everyone. This is not a members only club. You can go to any minyan anytime. You come to a city, where's the minyan? Where's your closest minyan? So at the MS, it belongs to everybody. And even if the people didn't go ahead and pay their membership dues, if the smach is that when people go ahead and by the Beis HaKnesses, it's on the smach that people will use it. So therefore, since it was put up on that smach, on that opinion, therefore it's owned universally, and therefore you can't sell it. It's not, you're not the Baal. Big for it in the boondocks that you put, people don't come and go. It's limited to the people there. Then you could sell it because you're the Balabatim. Over here in the Krochim, in the largest cities, then not. Why? Because again, you're not the Balabas. Kivin the Ma'alma Asilei, since Me'alma, they come from all over, you can't go ahead and sell them. You can't sell them. Right, look at Rashi. Allah shall Krochim. Go down a little bit. It has the din of a base knesses to Rabbim. V'hakol ba'aleihem, every one of the owners. Ve'ein b'nei ha'ir levadam ba'ilamahem, and the people of the city are not the only owners. Therefore, it's not theirs to sell. A person can't sell something that's not his. So again, here it is his, but not solely his. So keeping them al masi less lahu. Asilei loimatzi mizavnele. Since alma asilei they can't do it, they're not able to sell it. The highway the rabbin because it belongs to the rabbin. Ravashi, he has a different pshat. I mean, Ravashi goes ahead and he says he has an exception. Ravashi, hi bekanishta the masim machasya, the bekinesis the masim machasya. That's where he lived. Afagav the alma asilei. Even though people would come from other places to it. Even did adaite didikasi, since they come because of me, they come to learn with me. If I want to sell it, I can go ahead and sell it. So even if he didn't pay for it, right? Look, even if he didn't pay for it, right? It's considered his. Look at the top toasters, guys. Top toasters. Keeping the ma'alma kasila near lefarish. I can explain. Hachi. Keeping sheroiv b'nei adam regilim lachesham l'spalo. Since the majority of people go there to daven. This is speaking in the case before, regular case of a large city. Even though they weren't part of the building campaign, they didn't buy a brick. Right? Since this shul was built on the das of the rabbim, right? It's chama the kedusha, you're not able to sell it. Rashi's mashma, it's not theirs to sell. Tosis is mashma, the kedusha is chomer, you can't sell it. A little nuance that I didn't go into because I just noticed it now. For oid yesh lefarish, in addition, kiven sherabim noistin bebinyanoi ubeshart srachav ubesamech nami dekam Ravashi. This is about Menidi. The adati didikasi, the people, they're coming for me. It was made for me. Hainu imashin noistin by lasas ritzainai. The reason they gave it was to do the das of Ravashi. So be'emes, what they're doing is, Rashi says, this shul is my shul. This shul is my shul. I own it. Why? Because all funds were given for me that I should have a place that people should come learn. So that's an exception to the rule. Okay. Meisivei, the Gemara is going to ask on Shmuel, that Shmuel said that one that's in a shul that what can't be sold. You can tell me that a shul can't be sold if it's owned by the rabbin. Okay, just as a hakdama, we know there's something called a base menuga. A base menuga, it has to be, it can't be owned by, it has to be Eretz Achuzasnem. You can't have a base menuga, you can't have a house of Tsaras in Chutz Laretz. It's got to be in Chutz Laretz. And also, it has to be in Eretz Yisrael. And not only does it have to be Eretz Yisrael, it has to be in a private property. It has to be Eretz Chuzasnem. It has to be yours. We're going to segue into a kasha on Shmuel. The Gemara is going to explain the kasha. So, Meisivei. Amrav Yehuda, Maisa bebeis hakneses shel Tursiyim. There was a Maisa with the base knesses of these people. They made copper. Shahoya b'Yushalayim. Now the question, forget about the copper. The fact that it was in Yerushalayim. Shemachruhu l'Rebbe Eliezer. They sold it to Rabbi Eliezer. V'asibay kol tzarcha of Rabbi Eliezer. He used it for whatever he needed it for. In other words, it seemed that since it was sold to Rabbi Eliezer, no longer did it have kedushas beis hakneses. It had the din of a private property. And now Yerushalayim l'chayri is what is an open public city. But hahasam de krachim have there Yerushalayim is krachim, and nonetheless you see the Tursiyim, they sold it to Rabbi Eliezer, and it lost its kedusha. So you see you could sell it. You Shmuel want to tie in if it's in a large city, you can't sell it. You see the Tursiyim in Yerushalayim, which is a regular city, it's not a bundak by any means, and they sold it to Rebbe Eliezer, and you see the sale was valid. Why? Because it no longer has kedusha. It had no kedusha anymore. Says the Gemara, "Hahi bekenishta zutahave." That wasn't a regular base knesses. That was the base. That was the klois of the Tersian. It was a small shul. Vinu avduha, and they put it up for themselves. If you remember, if you ever heard in Europe that there are different people who had the same professions would daven in the same klois. It was called the klois. It's like a little place. I think this is the source for this, that they were more comfortable with the people. I think everyone's more comfortable in the shul with the people. You know, the old joke, shul. I don't go to that shul. You always need two shuls, the one you go to and the one that to, the one that I don't go to. So people are comfortable in their shuls. The Tersium, they put up a small shul. So it wasn't a big shul that the Osama Alma, that they came from all over, that was put up on the smach, that people would daven there, that you couldn't sell it like Shmuel stated. It was a small shul made for their needs. And the Mela, once they decided to sell it, they could sell it. So it's not a kasha on Shmuel, because it wasn't your classic, come give anyone who wants to come. It wasn't. Basically, we're going to ask another kasha. Base Eretz Achuzaschem. Here's you have a city, a base Eretz Achuzaschem, and the city again is this is where when it speaks about the tsuras, it has to be when you come to a base Eretz Achuzaschem. As I spoke in the Hakdama a little too early, I was a little offside over here, right? It has to be Eretz Achuzaschem. It has to be your achuza, right? Achuzaschem mitam ben goyim. Dafka, something that's your inheritance, is shayich tumas negoyim. Or dafka, something that's in shayich, your inheritance is shayich tumas negoyim. Ve'in Yerushalayim mitam ben negoyim, but Yerushalayim, in fact, any house in Yerushalayim can be mitam tumas negoyim. Okay, so no question yet on Shmuel. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, Ani lo shemati ela mokam migdash b'vad. I heard that the only place in Yerushalayim that it's not shayach tzras is in the base of Migdash, but the rest of Yerushalayim it would be. Okay, so let's go. We established the fact that in order to have in order to be a base menuga, a house of tzras, it has to be achuz aschem. Second statement, Yerushalayim cannot have. Says Rabbi Yehuda, let me qualify that statement. It's not universal all Yerushalayim. It's only in the Beis Hamikdash, but the rest of Yerushalayim you could. Says the Gemara, Habati Knisius Habati Midrashiyos, Mashma, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Bati Knisius and Bati Midrashiyos that were in Yerushalayim, they would be able to become Tamei. Now, Amai, Had the Krochen Have. Why would the Bati Knisius, in other words, said Rabbi Yehuda, the only place in Yerushalayim that can contract Tumas Negoyim of a house is the Beis Hamikdash. Mashma, any place else in Yerushalayim was open to Tumas Negoyim. Good? Including the Beis Knesses. But one second. Beis Knesses had the Krachim Have. It wasn't Achuz Aschem. It was universally owned. So based upon that, based upon Rabbi Yehuda, right? Based upon Rabbi Yehuda, Shmuel, we have a problem. How can you, Shmuel, say that you could not sell? You couldn't sell, right? You cannot sell what? The Krochim. You couldn't sell the Krochim, right? Why? Because it wasn't owned. You see over here, Rabbi Yehuda, that they what? They have, in other words, they could become Tamei. Guys, if they could become Tamei, it must be considered Achuz Aschem. It must be considered. Let me go over again. I wasn't clear. I wasn't clear myself. I wasn't clear. Let's go through it again. In order to be Tamei Tumas Negoyim, it has to be owned by somebody. It has to be Achuz Aschem. Good. That's the given. So if you hold a base Knesses in Yerushalayim, it's possible to become Tamei. Obviously, it's owned by somebody. Shmuel said a base Knesses of a large city is not owned by anybody. Kasha on Shmuel from Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, you just told me that a base Knesses could contract Tumas Negoyim. Therefore, it equates to that it's privately owned. It's Achuz Aschem. 1 second, if it's Achuz Aschem, you should be able to sell it. Shmuel, you said you can't sell it. So Shmuel, you said it's universally owned. Rabbi Yehuda is a Tana. Shmuel can't argue on a Tana. What does Shmuel do? Rabbi Yehuda Shita. Kasha and Shmuel for Rabbi Yehuda. Good, guys, good? Good. Okay. Says the Gemara, and for the Gemara, Ema on Rabbi Yehuda, Anilo Shemati, don't write Mokam on Migdash. Elamokam mikudosh bilvad. Let's expand it. It's not only the Beis Hamikdash, it's Mokom what? Mekudesh Bilvad. That the Pesvat of the Mokom Mekudesh. Meaning a shul that is Kodesh, could not contract Tumah. Why? Because it's not a Chuzaschem. Because why? Because it's not privately owned. It's not privately owned. Okay, there's a big shaila we've had in different places, whether Yerushalayim was publicly owned or it was privately owned, whether the houses were public or not. I did not download this. And I'm scared to go ahead and do it now because I may forget to put the recording back on, and we know what happens when that happens. But here you go. You're familiar. You're going up. That's Ezras Nashim. You're going up. That Ezras Nashim, black area was in the area of Yehuda. The other area, past the Ulam, past the Azaros. You're going to, and if you're going into Azara, then begins the Chelik Wad of Binyamin. But if you look by the Mizbeach, you'll see there's an area that's darkened. Because that area also was the area of Yehuda. So if you remember, we learned that there were two places that didn't have Yesod. Why didn't they have Yesod? Why didn't they have Yesod this way and this way? Because the Ritzua went from there, a strap went out from Yehuda into the Chelik of Binyamin. And only the Chelik of Binyamin had the Kedusha for the Zrikas Adam. Okay, so that gives you a picture. Again, we're familiar with that picture of Miyuma and also the Mizbeach, and we're familiar with this Gemara also. So let's go on. Says the Gemara. So right now, Shmuel's held serve, right? Right now, Shmuel has held serve. That what? Any place that's a Beis Hamikdash, not the Beis Hamikdash, any Beis Knesses, as a Beis Knesses, Kedusha's Beis Knesses in large cities can't be sold. Why? According to Rashi, because there's no ownership. According to Tosfos, because it's more chomer kedusha. Okay, now says the Gemara. The my comifli. This machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that it cannot get saras, and according to the Tanakama, that it could get saras. Right? What's pshat? Tanakama says, he says that what? Why can't, according to the Tanakama, again, Rabbi Yehuda limited it to what? He limited to the places that were Kodesh that couldn't get, the Beis Hamikdash and the Beis Knesset, because they weren't owned by people. The rest of the houses of Yerushalayim could get Saras. Tanakama said all of Yerushalayim can't get Saras. So l'chayra, guys, what's the machlokes? Whether the rest of Yerushalayim is considered Achuz Aschem. Again, let's go through it outside. Rule of thumb, base eretz achuz aschem, then it can get tsaras. What happens if it's not achuz aschem? There's no tsaras. The Tanakama who holds Yerushalayim is not susceptible any place in Yerushalayim, not only the Beis Hamikdash, not only the Bati Knisios, but even the privately quote unquote owned homes, is because there are no privately owned homes. Because the Tanakama holds Yerushalayim was not given over to be divided, and the Mela it's not achuz aschem. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda, who holds it is susceptible to Tumas Nagayim, must hold it is Achuz Aschem, because it was given over to be divided. That's going to be the Machlekes. My Kamifri, Tanakama Savar, Loin the Schalko Yerushalayim the Shvatim, that Yerushalayim was not divided up to the Shvatim. It wasn't divided up to the Shvatim, and therefore what? It was not Achuz Aschem, and therefore it's not Achuz Aschem, it's not susceptible to Tumah. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Rabbi Yehuda holds the Schalko Yerushalayim the Shvatim, it was divided up to the Shvatim. Just going to have to excuse. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Kenny. So, guys, you have it. It's a geshmak. It's a really geshmaki yisoidistic machlokes. Whether Yerushalayim was divided up to the masses or not. If it was divided up, it's shaykh to Mr. Goyim, because then it's considered beis eretz achuz aschem. If it wasn't divided up, then it's not. The Tanakama says it wasn't divided up, and Yehuda says it wasn't divided. Ubi pluked the Hani Tanoi. Machlokes no Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama is subject to machlokes of the other Tanoim, which is what the Tanya. Ma hoyu bechelko shel Yehuda. Which part of the of the Beis Hamikdash was in the Chelik of Yehuda. So Harabayas, right? We saw the Harabayas going up. That's any place that's aside. You don't even see the Harabayas. You saw the Ezra Nashim. The Harabayas is approaching that, right? Halishakos, the lishkos in the different chambers in the Chel, Azaros, the courtyards. That's all in the Chelik of Yehuda. What was the Chelik of Binyamin? Is what is the Ulam? That's the place. The Ulam. That's the tea, right? The Heichel. That's the one that's where that's Kedusha. That's where the Menorah and the Shulchan and the Mizbeach Hazav, Mizbeach Hazav, Ubeis Kodesh HaKadoshim, Uritzuyo Hoyse Yoytze Michelko Shel Yehuda. There was a portion that went out from the Chelik of Yehuda, v'nichneses b'chelko shel Binyamin. It went into the Chelik of Binyamin. It protruded. That was the dark part that went over the Mizbeach. Uba Mizbeach banu, and the Mizbeach was built on this part. V'hoyi Binyamin at Tzaddik mitztayer la b'chol yoyim l'boila. Binyamin the Tzaddik, he bothered him all the time. He wanted that it should be part of his shenemar. Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Chleifim for love kol hayoyim ubein kseifav of shachein." He mamish if he rubs himself, he worries about it all the time. Lefikach, because of this, since as he lost, therefore, as a result, that it bothered him so much that he didn't get that area of the shulchan the mizbeach. Therefore, the Beis Hamikdash, the Shechina was in his place. The Shechina was in his place. That's beautiful, beautiful b'shad. So that's Montana. Now, just to now, this just to digress for a second. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of Torah, guys. Mamish, a beautiful piece of Torah. This is the Meshech Chochma guys from Parshas Tetzaveh. And he has another reason why the Beis Hamikdash was in the Chelik of Binyamin. And listen what he says. V'da, the Chol HaShvatim, Tziru La'avihem. All the Shvatim, they were Mitzayah the father. The Mechiras Yosef, for Yosef being sold. For Yosef Atzmai lo yadil aviv. And Yosef himself did not go ahead and send a text message from Yerushalayim or anything. Rak Yosef Yarim Mifnei Acherim. Yosef was worried about the Cherim that Yaakov should not know. So the brothers didn't tell Yaakov. Yosef didn't tell Yaakov. So be'emes, by all not informing Yaakov about Mechir Yosef, each one in their own way was not mechabed their father. They caused their father tsar. Avol Binyamin kibed la'aviv. Why? He didn't know about the mechira. He wasn't there by the mechira. He was totally in the dark. He didn't know. Lochein sharsa shchina b'chelko, and therefore the shchina was shayra in the chelik wat of Binyamin. Okay, it goes on a little bit longer. The Gemara in Kiddushin says, right, that anyone who is mechabed shleisha shifrim ba'adam. Kolzman a person is mechabed of imay, ki'ilu darti b'neihem. It's as if I lived among them, v'kibduni, and they were mechabed me. A beautiful Meshech Chochma. Mida keneged mida. The Baal Binyamin was the only one that was mechabed his father. What did the Chazal say? Anyone who's mechabed ki'ilu darti b'neihem v'kibduni. So therefore, what Hashem says, I'll live among Binyamin. He was the only one who was Mekayim Kibbut Aveim. As I state in the Meshech Chochma Parshas Tetzaveh, Masla Kidvash, guys, Masla Kidvash, beautiful, beautiful Meshech Chochma. He goes on to say about the stone that was lost by Doma ben Nesina was the stone of Binyamin, to illustrate that. And then you had the Maisa with Doma ben Nesina did not wake up his father. He didn't wake up his father, and they showed the Kibbut Aveim. Of the Gemara and Kiddushin. So it all comes together, the Meshech Chochma, a beautiful, beautiful interpretation to explain this Inyan. Okay? So quite beautiful. Says the Gemara, Bahani Tanoi Sava, the Tan of the Brisa says, that it wasn't divided up. And since it wasn't divided up, right, then you can't have a Beis Menuga. The Tanya, you can't rent out a house in Yerushalayim. Why? Because it's not yours to rent. It's not yours. It's not yours. Well, yeah, from Elazar of Tzaddik or Elazar of Shimon Aimer, Aflay Mitais. They can't even go ahead and rent out the beds. Lafikach, therefore, since in fact they are using something, Oires Kachim Bale Oshpizin Nightly Saibizraya. The Oires of Kachim, again, this is only open during Oile Regalim. This halacha is only by the Oile Regal who had to be there. So they will open youth hostels. And these people, they couldn't make any money. So what did they do? They said that they get the skins, all the skins of all the animals that are brought, and leather was a commodity. They got all the skins. Oires Kachim Bali Ushpizin, the people who would take other people in against their will, because again, they're not getting money for it. But they would be able to take it physically, to be able to take it if they didn't want to give it. So you see that the Tanakama and Lezim and Tzaddik, they hold that Yerushalayim wasn't given out to the Shvatim, because why? Because it's not yours to rent. So that's the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda, who says it was, and he says it wasn't. Amar Rabbi Shmami, no, what do we see from this brisa? Oirich Ara, it's good derech eretz. Lemishvach inish gulpa umashcha ushpiza. When a person leaves, if it stays a place, he should leave over a jug. A jug is a gulpa is a jug, mustam with some wine in it, and what? And he should leave over a mashcha, a skin. Can you imagine going, like you go to people's house for Shabbos, you bring in an animal skin and say, "Here, go ahead. Here you have it." It's in English, the word is a slunk. You bring in a slunk and you leave it there. What a guest. I guarantee you they won't have you back again. Maybe a good bottle of wine, but that not. Avrami, you ever got a slunk? Yeah, okay. And very, very good.
It's better than using Marriott points.
Very good. Amarava. Okay, now, Amarava, this din, right, about selling things and buying down, Leishanu, Shiva Toivia. In other words, if you can't sell the shul, we know shuls are sold. So you can't sell a shul. That's only if you don't sell it using the five tuvia, the machas, the guys who are in charge of the city. If these 7 people are there, along with the people of the cities, Amid Beis, then afilu, you can sell it, and you could even lemishte be shichra, to go ahead and drink beer with it. Then it loses kedusha. In other words, the money that there's no tatfas of kedusha over here if it's sold that way. Ravina Havile Ahu Tila Bekanishta. Ravina, he had a tal. He knocked over. He had a. Rashi says that any place that says a til is lashon of a tal is a house that was destructed. So the house was destructed, and this was a base Knesset that was destructed. Asla Kamei the Ravashi. He came in front. He came in front of Ravashi. He came in front of Ravashi, and he asked him, "Mahul Zare," and he said to him, "Can I go ahead and plant over here?" Ravina wanted to know, can he plant in this place? Can he go ahead and plant? Because maybe it does it have its kedusha and you can't, or it does have. That's what we want to know. Does it have kedusha or not? That's what we know. The fact that it's like broken up, does it have kedusha or not? So later, Ravashi told him, "Sil zavne mishiva tuva year. It might be an anshe year. Go sell it using 7 people, and the other people are there, and then plant it." So you see, it's still at kedusha. In order to take off kedusha, it had to be universal sale. Rami Baraba, Bani Bey Kanishta. Rami Baraba, he was building a base Knesset. He Kanishta Atika, and there was an old shul, and he wanted to go ahead and knock down the old shul and put up a new shul. So, Havi Boiler mystery, he wanted to knock it down. Ulasuyi Livne Ukshur Mina, and he wanted to use the old beams, the old kairos and the bricks from it. By Yulei Lahasam, and he wanted to put them in the new building. Yosef becoming boy Leila Rab Chista, so he wanted to know, could he do this? So he brought the shalat to Rav Chista. The Amar Rav Chista, Leilista Bekanishta Adam Bani Bekanishta Achrita. What was he worried about? You're not allowed to knock down an old base Knesset until you go and put up a new one. Hasam, what's the reason over there? Mishum Pishusa. Maybe you're going to be Pasheya and you won't go ahead and put it up. You'll knock down the old one, you won't put it up. But Mashenki Kiyad Gavna, why? What about over here? Guys, that you want to use that material for the new shul, so there's not a concern of Kista. Rav Chista's then is why you worry about negligence. I'll knock it down, I won't put up a new one. Over here, since I'm going to use the material from the old one, maybe the whole reason for Rabbi Rav Chista doesn't apply. So that was the shaila that Rami Rabba had. Says the Gemara, what happened? Ki agav namai. So Asla Kamei Rav Papa Rami brought the shaila to Rav Papa. And he said, he said, it's asa. You're worried about Pshia. The Kameder of Huna of Asla, and he also said it's Asa, right? You only can build it when what you can only knock down the old one when you put up a new one. Amarava, High Bay Kanishta, bunch of different halachas. High Bay Kanishta, that we're discussing. Chalufe bezvune shari. Once you sell it, right, you can exchange it for something else, or to sell it. But ugra, to go ahead and rent it out. Umashkuna asa, but to rent it out or to mortgage it, that won't be allowed. My time, what's the difference? Just a koi, when the base knesses is rented, then what? It still has its kedusha, and therefore you can't use it for other purposes. Mashenkin, when you sold it, then you could. Livni nami. Let's say you have bricks that are set aside for a base knesses. Chalufinu v'zevninu shari. Let's say you bought it for other bricks or something else, so you sell them, then you can go ahead and use that money. However, it's finu, but if you lend them out, then it's asa. Hani mili b'atikasa. It's only bricks that have a kedusha because they were used they were used already. Al b'chadasa, if the bricks were never used, less number, then you don't have to worry. You can even lend them out because they don't have a kedusha. Hasmana milsa. You even Mandiyama said you set aside the bricks for the purpose of a base medrash. Hasmana, you mizamin it, you designate it for it. And there's a person that says throughout Shas Hasmana milsa. Hanimili, it's not dafka kigoyin ha'oirig beged lemeis. Hasmana would be you went ahead and you didn't set it aside for the mace, but you went ahead and you wove it for the mace. So then the hasmona, because it's a fartka kli, it's a finished product, then you have a problem. Mashen came the brick, which has not been built into the building yet. It's just a brick. Even though you're going to use it for that, that's not. He would be moida. Even that mandama would be moida. Avalacha kitavi la'arig dami. Here, this brick. It's like when you go ahead, you spun wool for the purpose of making the tachrichin, right? The leka lemanda amar. When is the hasmona milsahi? If I actually took the wool, spun it, or linen, spun it, and made the beged. So even though I didn't go ahead and say it's for this mace, nonetheless, hasmona preparation is something, and you can't use it for anything else. Everyone will be moida that you just took the linen and twisted it. You'll be good. The same thing is with a brick. When would hasmona milsa be a problem? If you went ahead and you put the brick in the building, and the building as of yet hasn't been set aside, but it will be. Vashenkin, when the brick is not set in the building, it's like the linen twisted, it wasn't already in the beged. Therefore, it's not a problem. Matana. What about if they give the shul to someone as a matana? Can you use it? Does it lose its kedusha? So pligi bar ravacha ravina chad asa v'chad shari. One says it's asa, one says it's muta. Man the asa b'hai tifka kedusha. So one says asa. What happened? What took off the kedusha? You didn't sell it. You didn't do anything. You gave it away. So it still remains that way. Man the shari says ilav the havile hana minei. If the person that they gave it to did not give them hana, meaning the people who are giving it away obviously must have had enough of the person they're giving it to. I mean, they don't want to give it to him. So for that hana, that's where the kedusha goes. And therefore it's given over, and now it's no kodesh, and you can use it for anything else. So hada havile matana kizvina. In that case, the hana that he received is like the money in a sale. That matana is bizvini. Matana would have the same din as a sale. Now, since we're discussing going down in kedusha and up in kedusha, Ma'alu Kodesh Maridin, the Gemara now goes into again, I didn't prepare very well. I had a tough morning, but this is a really nice sugya to look up the halachas about tzitzis, yamikis, ritzuas of tefillin. In other words, tashmishe mitzvah versus tashmishe kedusha. Tashmishe mitzvah, as we're going to see, you're able to disregard, you can get rid of in a bakavidik way. You could take tzitzis, put it in a plastic bag, or yarmulke, put in a plastic bag and put it in the garbage. However, tashmisha kedusha needs geniza that you'd have to go ahead and bury. Says the Gemara, Tan Rabbana, tashmisha mitzvah, nizrakim. You can go ahead, you could throw them away. Again, the Ramah, I know Salach Ramah says that you have to do it in about kavidik way. That's why the plastic bag. Tashmisha kedusha, nignazim, but tashmisha kedusha, you have to go ahead and hide. Meaning they have to be like shemis. Now the Gemara is going to say what makes tashmisha kedusha. The Gemara is going to say the Elohim tashmisha mitzvah. What's tashmisha kedusha? What are they? The Elohim tashmisha mitzvah: sukkah, lulav, shofar, tzitzis. A sukkah, a lulav, shofar, tzitzis. These are all objects you did the mitzvah with. These are all tashmisha mitzvah. The Elohim tashmisha kedusha, and all this tashmisha mitzvah you could go ahead and disregard. Tashmisha kedusha not. The luskama svarim tefillin. If you have a sack that you carry svarim, they used to have again the svarim, neviim, ksuvim, chumashim, and tefillin. That's your tefillin zekel. Umezuzus, that's your tefillin case. With tick shall sefer Torah, or the tick that you keep a sefer Torah in, pashas the mantle. The nartik shall tefillin. Rashi says the nartik and the liskama are basically the same thing. One encloses a longer object, the other one not. All these are tashmisha kedusha. All these are tashmisha kedusha. Now, guys, I'm throwing this out. Your tefillin, you have the boxes on top of the tefillin, right? So the boxes is l'chayre tashmisha kedusha. The zekel would be tashmish l'tashmish. As we're going to see in a second, secondary tashmish does not have it in a tashmish kedusha. It's only what touches the davar kodesh itself. Most of us do not have the tefillin directly in the tefillin bag. We have the tefillin in those boxes that we enclose them in. So l'chayra, again, I don't know the halacha. I'm throwing this out because I just thought of it. L'chayra, our tefillin zeklach should have a din of tashmish to tashmish, not the lichatchila to tashmish. Says the Gemara. Amarava, Meresh initially, have amina, high kursiya. That's the bima that they put the Torah on. Tashmish to tashmishu. Why would this be a secondary tashmish? Why? Because what do we put on top of a bima, guys? We usually spread some type of velvet. That velvet's what touches the Sefer Torah. That velvet is tashmisha kedusha, but the bima that's on is tashmish to tashmish. That's why my shaila goes in my head about that tefillin, the shari, and therefore what you'll be able to use it for other things. Kevin the chazina.
Rabbi Stern, what happened about the glass or the plexiglass that they put on top of
so that
the shulchan cover?
Oh, the plexiglass have kedusha or not? That's interesting. That would make it a second level of kedusha. No,
right, but that's what the Sefer Torah is touching first.
I hear. That's a very interesting shaila, David. I don't know. It's a very interesting shaila. But I don't know. It's a very interesting shaila. Keep in the chazina the moisvi alave Sefer Torah. Since we see that sometimes they put the Sefer Torah directly on the bima, Amina tashmish kedusha. I said the bima itself is a tashmish kedusha, but aser, and therefore you won't be able to use it for anything else. In other words, if it's a tashmish to tashmish, guys, you'll be able to eat off the top of it. You'll be able to eat on it. But it's tashmish kedusha for shteis chinat. Amarava meireish havamina. First I said hay prisa tashmish to tashmishu. They used to have inside the Aron Kodesh, they would have curtains inside the Aron Kodesh, and that's the tashmish to tashmish. Again, the Aron itself is the tashmish, and this prisa is the tashmish to tashmish, right? Keeping the chazin and the eifileu manchi sifra labe. Since sometimes they would go ahead, they would bend this curtain this inside and put the Torah directly on. I mean, a kedusha havi. I'd say it has kedusha v'yasa. Rava gives us a third din. Hai tevusa the airport. You have a tevusa. You have a Aron Kodesh. The airport fell apart. Rashi says that it lost its nails. May of the tevas of Rashi Shari to go ahead and downsize to make a smaller teva that you could do, but kursiya to make a shtenda, to make a bima that you can't do because that's less of a kedusha. So to keep it the same level you could do. So let's say an Aron Kodesh falls apart, and then you make it the one like they have like Leilenu when you have Avelis, you have the small Aron Kodesh they bring that Misaskin brings that you'll be able to do because those are parallels in kedusha. But anything go from an Aron Kodesh to a bima, that's less of a kedusha. V'amarava hay prisa de bala. You have a prisa is a curtain. The bala it becomes torn, becomes worn out. Lenev the prisa l'sifri shari to go ahead and make it using my this is used for to line it was lining the Aron Kodesh. You could use it to make it a covering for tires and for svarim. But to make it for a single book of the Torah, Chumash, you used to have a single book that you can't do. Rava, Hani Zvile the Chumsha, these Zvilin, these sacks that they would keep these separate books of the Torah in. Again, the Chumash was 5 separate books. The Kamtori the Sifri, and the cases that they would keep these in, Tashmish Kedushin, they have dinner Tashmish Kedusha, then ignozim, and they have to go ahead and then they had to go ahead and put away. Shita what's the Chiddush? The Tashmish Kedusha. So Ma'ad Tema Hani Lav L'Kovid Avidin. These were not made for the purpose of them in the first place. But Laturi Ba'alma Vidi. What? You didn't make that to mechabed them. You made it to watch them. Why do you make you weren't mechabed them. You made it that it should protect it. It shouldn't get wet. We made it to protect it. Right? The woods should be cases. Again, this is not the Aron Kodesh. These are the separate books of Chumoshim. And you have a sack in it, or you're putting them in a case. So I would have thought that they're just to protect them. They're not mamish like a mamish Aron Kodesh, Lashon Kodesh. So I would think that what they don't have a din Tashmisha Kedusha, Kamash Malon, they have a din rod of Tashmisha Kedusha. Okay, we're going to stop over here.
Years ago in the Bronx and East New York and all over, the expression was the last person holding the keys. All the buildings were sold. Where'd all the money go? When the shul wound down, there's 2-3 people left. That's it. They made a fortune years ago, people. They sold all the buildings.
Don't know.
And they aren't Kaddish my shul. They moved. The aren't Kaddish is safe. And there was a wood frame around it. Rabbi Levi said it had to be buried, the wood.
It wasn't, he never did a tashmish to tashmish. He held that was the Aron Kodesh itself.
Oh, that was the aren't Kaddish, yeah.
Well, I would think it makes sense because why are you putting wood around it? It's the mechabed the Sefer Torah. That the Sefer Torah is a safe. A safe is not mechabed it. It's clearly in a tira. It's very interesting. Why would you didn't? And this might be bearing on your David, on your Shaila. What a safe that kept the Sefer Torah in would it need Geniza, or would say it's only to watch it? I would say it's only to watch it. Correct? Yes. So maybe the glass on top is only to protect the mantle. It's not to cover the Sefer Torah. It's to protect what's underneath that mantle from getting ripped. And I'm just throwing it out. It's a nice shaila you have. But in Svara, that would make sense, right? If you're telling me that a safe cannot go ahead and clearly that's Lenature. The wood is the keyboard. It's very interesting. I'm going to Rabbi Berdinsky.
I think the safe also, Rabbi Levi said, we don't give it safe. I got to another shul. But the safe, otherwise they have to bury.
He said you have to bury the safe?
I think so, yeah. He said we have to bury it also.
I would think that's...
That was the encouragement. I hear what you're saying. It's a good swear on the wood.
Okay, I'm going to ask the Rashiva.
Good.
Okay. Anyway, have a good Shabbos, everybody.
You have a good Shabbos. Bye.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Shabbos.